Hello, LinkedIn Live audience, and welcome to this month's live panel debate. I'll be your host, Claire Muscat, and I'm the very proud founder of Women in CX, the world's first online membership community for women in customer experience. Before I introduce today's topic and my esteemed guests, I'd love to know two things in the chat. First of all, where in the world are you joining us from today? And secondly, is transformation a problem or a solution when it comes to CX? We'd love you to get involved in this conversation today in the chat. So please feel free to let us know, what do you think? Is transformation a problem or a solution when it comes to CX? But while we're waiting for a few more people to join, in the background, I've got my amazing team supporting this live stream. Meg's here with me coordinating backstage, and Harley is supporting you in the chat. I'm sure Harley will pop up and say hi. But just to tell you a little bit more about what we do, for anyone who's not familiar for Women in CX, or WIX as we're known, we actually started out as a podcast during the pandemic in 2020 as a platform for women to share their career stories, experiences and ideas about customer experience, and became a startup community on International Women's Day 2021. We co-designed the community together with our founding members, our mission being to unite women across the globe to collaborate, inspire and support one another on the path to CX mastery. And now, just over a year on, our community spans over 50 countries, with access to a private social media network, networking events, guest webinars, member-led masterclasses and case studies, plus a whole resource library of exclusive content to help our members flourish both personally and professionally. We even offer a social pricing model and a free scholarship for women who are out of work to ensure that all social and economic barriers to taking part are removed in the spirit of true equality. We're also on a mission to amplify the voices of women in our industry, hence taking what was previously a roundtable discussion held inside the community live to you, our audience here on LinkedIn today. So just as a reminder, today we're discussing, is digital transformation a problem or a solution when it comes to CX? So I'm going to have a little look at the chat now and see what we've got going on here. So we've got Miriam in Iran. Oh, Elenia in Italy. We've got Dolly. Hey, ladies. Adri in Barcelona. Just held an amazing meetup I saw from our Instagram this weekend. Erika in Austria. And Elzan. Oh, what an amazing name, from South Africa. So she's saying transformation is important to CX. However, the implementation, adoption, change, management is critical to success. Super interesting. We've got Evelyn here as well. So yeah, anyone else, what's your opinion? Do you think that digital transformation is a problem or a solution when it comes to customer experience? Let us know your thoughts while we're warming up. So just to position this conversation today, here's the blurb. So transformation is all around us these days. The answer to everything seems to be a radical overhaul. It sounds bold, aspirational and sexy, but is it really the right approach? And do these projects ever deliver the goods? Apple's remarkable metamorphosis under Steve Jobs is one clear success story, but it captured people's imaginations because such transformations are exceedingly rare, not because they're easily achievable. In truth, large-scale episodic changes rarely work due to the cost, complexity, leadership and timescales involved. Entropy wins, and by the time companies have transformed, their customers have already moved the goalposts. The longer we take to deliver, the more risk we expose ourselves to. The larger the changes we propose, the greater the resistance we face. Every market sector has invested in digital transformation over the last few years with varying levels of success. And although technology has become vital in understanding customers and how they interact with brands, it doesn't necessarily equal a great customer experience. So what's the alternative? How do we move at pace to create greater value for customers, employees, and the business? So I'm about to be joined by a panel of expert guests from the Women in CX community as we discuss the challenges faced by CX leaders tasked with customer experience during transformation, debate the merits of different approaches, and provide practical advice and tips on how to create more value for customers, organizations, and employees in the process. So yeah, let us know in the chat, what are you thinking, guys? Have we got any more comments? So Salisha's saying it can be both. Sonia's saying they should go together. Miriam saying, as always, it depends when it comes to implementation, but generally it will boost CX processes. Interesting. So Karen from Colombia is saying, for sure, digital transformation isn't the problem, but the budgets associated with transformation are. Interesting. Wow. And Diana as well, digital transformation can be an enabler for customer experience. So sounds like we've got people representing both sides of the argument there. And yeah, can't wait to bring our queens on stage. So without further ado, let's bring on the panel. So first of all, we've got Vice President of Digital Marketing at Precision Value and Health, Christy Dempster. Welcome. Director of Product Enablement at LivePerson, Shamim Smiley. Managing Director at Solutioneers, Anne Gray, and CX Design and Career Coach, Amelie Behrens. Welcome, ladies. How are you doing today?
Hello.
What a gorgeous panel. You're keeping well, keeping cool. It's a heat wave over here in the UK, rather warm.
Here as well.
Good. Amazing. So let's get started then. And I think we should start with our intro. So ladies, I'd love for you to tell the audience a little bit more about who you are, where you're based, and how you're connected with the subject of digital transformation. So Christy, you're immediately to my right. I'm going to pick on you first.
Okay, great. Hi, I'm Christy Dempster here in the Midwest in the USA. I have over 25 years working in a variety of roles impacting customer experiences, primarily in the life sciences and medical device space. I've led and contributed digital transformations from digital products and services, internal systems and processes, digital marketing, and of course, CX. I'm a huge advocate for the importance of the customer experience, the role technology and data can play in delivering and measuring great experiences, and the win-win that can be achieved. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Lovely to have you here. And I love that, the win-win that can be achieved. That's our primary role, isn't it? Finding these win-wins in customer experience for the business. So next to my right, we've got Shamim. Tell us a bit more about you.
Hi there. So my name is Shamim Smiley, and I spent pretty much all of my career working in the tech industry for tech vendors, selling both business to business, business to customer. And I think I want to say that for as long as I can remember anyway, I've always connected to digital transformation initiatives within organizations that I worked for, as well as businesses, brands that I work with directly. And I think I guess that, because I specialize in contact center and CCaaS technologies for the most part, I would say that any business that interacts and provides services for people, for their customers, internally or externally, have a need for some flavor of digital transformation. And that's what I love most about it.
Love it. That's great. Thanks, Shamim. And down to the bottom, we've got Amelie. Bonjour.
Bonjour. Hello. So my name is Amelie. I'm a CX design, career, and business coach. I work with ambitious CX professionals to take action, develop their confidence, and deliver with radical human centricity. So I worked in the digital industry for 12 years already, and I have a really strong focus on implementing and everything around collaboration. Definitely my favorite projects. And I've done that in many different industries. That's one of the advantages of being a digital person. CX grew on me with years because it's all the human-centered methodologies related to CX and the mindset that goes with it that are, in my opinion, the way to stop the unsustainable growth frenzy we are in, and also to focus on what really matters, people. So yeah, that's exactly that thing, putting humans at the heart of everything. That is my driver, and that's why I show up every day. That's why I share content. That's why I share as well practical resources for those who embrace that same ambition. And putting people everywhere as a priority. Voila.
Voila. I love that. Okay. And Anne, last but not least, tell us more about you, where you're from, what you do.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anne Gray. I'm coming to you from the Southern Hemisphere where it is winter and it's terrible. It's 18 degrees Celsius. And today in South Africa, we are celebrating Nelson Mandela's birthday. My background is telecoms. I started a telecoms service management company and sort of took a bit of a detour into software as a service, product development, launch and scale. And at the moment, I'm a digital transformation consultant, and I really help my customers take a customer experience led approach, looking through the customer's lens at what needs to be transformed before starting and mapping out the digital transformation. I find myself in digital transformation due to an insightful question asked of me 4 years ago by a customer who said, how do we know that the digital transformation we're about to embark on is going to deliver the results that move the dial for our organization as a whole? And that one simple question led me down a rabbit hole. Last year, I completed my MBA. And as part of that, I researched digital transformation and developed a model for measuring the success of digital transformation projects throughout the implementation lifecycle and beyond. And so that's how I landed up in digital transformation and customer experience.
Awesome. And I'm going to come back and ask you a question about your research in a second, but just notice we've got plenty of people from South Africa here today as well. And I just noticed a comment by Erika Toth. So she's saying, nowadays, digital transformation is so often necessary to deliver up to scratch experiences, but its scope needs to be relevant in the context of the business and its core product. It seems possible to over-digitalize, and in that case, customer experience will not be better. Sometimes less is more. I love that, Erika. A little round of applause. What a great statement. So Anne, I think the audience would love to know a bit more about this research that you did. I know specifically you identified, was it 4 main types of digital transformation? Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So, it wasn't me that defined 4 types of digital transformation. It was the research that I did, and from the literature, there are 4 different types of digital transformation. The first one is business process, where we optimize processes for cost savings and increased throughput by leveraging emerging technology. The second type is customer-oriented digital transformation. This is where we use digital technology and the digital economy to enhance customer interactions with business. Then we have the third type, which is business model digital transformation. So this is where we create new digital products and services and access the digital economy that way. And then lastly, we have a organizational digital transformation. So this is where we reorganize the whole organization and position it for future success in the digital economy. So those, in a nutshell, are the 4 different types of digital transformation.
And you just cut out momentarily. So can I just check those back with you again? So the first one was business process transformation. Yeah. Second was customer oriented. The third was, did you say business innovation?
Business model.
Business model. Yeah. Oh, Harley's very helpfully pasted it in the chat for us there. So for creation of new products and services, and then organizational, so reorganizing success in the future. So audience, you've got the 4 main types of transformation and digital transformation there in the chat. Which ones do you come across most frequently? I know for me, in my experience, it was also always more focused around business process or organizational transformation. But we'd love to know where does transformation happen most frequently, or the reason for transformation happen most frequently for your organizations. So let's think a little bit more around this killer question then. So we've had some thoughts from the audience, and ladies, I have to ask you, I think, given that I wrote the opening statement as a book chapter, probably know where I sit on this, but ladies, is digital transformation a problem or a solution when it comes to CX? Does anyone think it's a problem? Oh, okay. Anyone think it's a solution? Okay, so Shamim, so we've got Emily and me who think it's a problem. And a bit of Shamim, Anne who thinks it's a solution, and Christy and Shamim are saying it's both. Oh, can't sit on the fence, ladies. You have to choose one or the other. No, only kidding. But we'll investigate this a little bit deeper now. So I'll start with Emily. Why do you think it's a problem?
Because it's exactly what I observe every time I start a new assignment to work on something digital. Digital transformation has been the one strategy to go for, and now it's like a mess. It's a mess because it has been years that people try to deliver new product, new solutions, new technology, new tools with the same old methodologies, collaboration ways, and everything. But it's confusing, and at one point somebody put them into a new type of collaboration type, or the order was not right. It was, let's put the solution and the digitalization, because at one point it's what happened. People were just digitalizing everything they were doing in their job, thinking that it will make it easier for everybody. But for me, they forgot the one thing: who is going to be at the end of that and in the beginning? And then the answer is people. So it has been confusing for a lot. It has been a distress in the job of many. And yeah, digital transformation for me should be one of the steps at one point at the road, when we know what we are going for, and when people are ready to work together, to learn together, and to do something together, really.
Interesting. Yeah, a lot resonates with me on that one. I guess I just have seen so many customer experiences just being the output of a load of digital transformation. So it wasn't actually designed to create an experience in any way. It's just, we put this technology here, that technology here, this technology in the background over there, and hey presto, that's what you're going to get customers. So
yeah,
so I think that kind of aspect of like thinking about the end user first is something that's not commonly done. That's why one of the reasons it's problematic. But I also agree with you that kind of that cross-functional collaboration when digital transformation projects can quite often be led by a singular team that are collecting a load of requirements and perhaps not touching base very often after that point around what we're supposed to be delivering, can be incredibly problematic indeed. So before I go to the fence sitters, Anne, you'll give us the opposite. So why do you think it is a solution?
Well, I think that transformations, regardless of what type of transformation you're doing, when it's done badly, they are problematic. And I think digital transformation gets a bad rap because so many people believe that digital transformation will be the panacea to all of their problems. But when it comes to it, if the organization is not transformation ready and the processes have not been matured, then you will end up with a disastrous transformation that actually amplifies the immaturity of the organization or the processes in terms of its customer-centric culture or just wonky processes that were immature. But done well, digital transformation can be leveraged to provide superior customer experience by reducing friction for the customer, improving workflows for the employees, massively reducing the error rate internally, and also providing useful data that we can tap into to gain insights about our customers and their behaviors and preferences that we didn't necessarily have before.
Okay, so saying transformation done badly is definitely a problem, but transformation done well could be alternatively productive in terms of results. I think we're going to have to draw down much further into how to do it right shortly. But before we do, the ladies that are on the fence, have you got splinters? Christy, why do you think it's right?
Yeah, I think if we're looking at digital implementation versus transformation, I think that's one thing. Oftentimes we say transformation, but really, Claire, like you mentioned, it's all about implementing a tool. And you've got this tool here, this tool there. Without a clear goal that's aligned with the customer and without clear visibility to how that tool impacts across the journey. And so the prime example that comes to mind is call centers and telephony and using IVR to enhance, some back-end wins and some back-end efficiencies, while at the same time providing typically a horrible customer experience and one that isn't very humanized. So I think there's that piece. And then on the other side, there's an amazing opportunity to leverage data and technology to create experiences for your customers across the entire journey, across digital, offline, depending on the industry, but have an omni-channel experience that's connected. And you need the data and technology to do that, but you've got to be going for the right outcome and recognize all of the touch points that will be impacted.
Amen to that. And just picking up on a word that Anne had said a little earlier, the kind of, and nothing is a panacea, right? Customer experience is not a panacea. Digital transformation is not a panacea. Omnichannel is not a panacea. There is no such thing. It's a hell of a lot of hard work to create great customer experiences, without a doubt. And Shamim, like coming from the vendor side, I love that you wrote an article for the community the other day that we'll be publishing on our website soon. But you were getting splinters on the fence as well. Like you've seen, I suppose, both sides of this argument.
100%.
Especially when it comes to contact center and those like technologies that create a different route to service, like IVRs and chatbots that we know sometimes aren't that well trained before they get switched on with their machine learning. What's your thoughts?
Exactly. Well, it definitely can be both. I've seen projects, I've worked with many organizations where it's been successful, and I worked where there's been some problems as well. But I really think it just depends on why, as an organization, you're doing it in the first place. So, I always want to bring you back to why are we doing this? What's the approach going to be? What's the plan? And I think, when it fails, it tends to be around execution and not aligning the key stakeholders. And I think, sometimes what's missing is having clarity and the details on what does success look like. Because, everybody's storming forward, running 100 miles an hour. And, you end up sometimes just running around a bit like headless chickens. And I think we have to recognize as well that success can look different depending on the role we all have. So I agree with what everybody said. Nobody has said anything that's not true. It's just that, two or more things can be right at the same time. But we have got to make sure that, our objectives are met, by individual teams as well as departments, whilst making sure that we're meeting the objectives of, the company-wide goals. Otherwise, we're we're going to fail. So it's all about preventing all of that and maximizing success.
Okay. So I'm hearing there potentially
that's the short version. It's the short version.
Yeah. We have to read Shamim's article out next week to get the full debrief on this. But some really interesting comments coming through on the chat again. I know Alex Acosta just popped up and pointing out very importantly the importance of being able to connect any change really that's being invested in with return on investment, and no more so in customer experience, where it seems like we are often asked to prove our homework more than perhaps sales and marketing might be. Susanna is saying, she's agreeing with Christabel. There's a bit of an agreement in the chat here around change management being the problem, project management, implementation of anything that is transformative and change oriented being one of the more problematic aspects. Elzan, I hope I'm saying that right. Elzan Webb, that's an awesome name. But talking about the issues of not having a proper strategy or being able to incorporate voice of the customer in at the right time, and being able to collect those data points to measure whether anything that you're doing, I guess, in digital isn't just being digital for digital's sake, or perhaps digitizing a bad process that was broken in the first place. Being able to listen to and understand customers at the start and during and after any change that we implement. So, so we're in a really fortunate position today that we've got representation from some really interesting different places in the world, and also sectors and perspectives. So I guess, Christy, I'm going to come back to you, kind of coming from this life sciences and healthcare regulated industry backgrounds where, data privacy is a huge aspect of what you do. What do you see as the main challenges of delivering any kind of digital change project from your point of view?
Yeah. So when you think about change, when you talked about change management, there's a lot of, regardless of what you're trying to do, there's a lot of facets to that you need to focus on. What's the reward? What's the WIFM? And what's in it to me? What's the impact? So you've got these internal dynamics. From a life sciences and healthcare industry, I think it's the challenges are further compounded because you have regulations. You're dealing with oftentimes B2B, B2C, B2B2C type scenarios in very large matrix organizations that are likely have operations across multiple countries, as well as serving, those that they serve are across multiple countries. So it adds additional levels of complexity to the change. And then because, like I mentioned before, data and technology can be so powerful in creating experiences and personalizing experiences. Once you factor in a regulated environment and data privacy, not only from just general like GDPR and global data privacy things, but now you've got potentially healthcare information. That's another level of scrutiny. It makes those changes even more difficult. And for organizations that tend to be more risk averse, sometimes that can be a little limiting to what you're able to actually accomplish with the experiences that you're trying to create for your customers.
Yeah, that will make sense. I'm going to come to Amelie next. Actually, kind of, you've been a product owner. You've like sat on digital teams during transformation. Where do you think they go wrong? Like, what are the most common mistakes that are being made, or alternatively, what are the biggest opportunities we've got to bring those people to be more central to any kind of change and transformation?
They start too big. They want to create giant project with everybody involved, so nobody is left aside, or that it's inclusive in some corporate meaning. But actually the secret is to start small. And so that's actually the complexity when you start is the number one reason project fails in my perspective, because people are not used to collaborate together. You mentioned how legal wise it can be complicated. That's okay. Those legal people are not on board on many projects that are customer oriented because of the nature of their job. And if you want to involve them in a good way, taking them as you start on a small issue, they have a learning curve like you have, like we have, like whoever have. So that's important that you start small. And so everybody can on board learn and create impact. So that's the number one thing I've seen repeatedly for whatever sector it is, and for whatever size of project. Digital fully from end-to-end project is always a thing. You want to see big, and the ambition is colorful. I love ambition, but that's not how you reach ambition, not by starting big.
I think Alex is agreeing there to say it's really important to be able to break down the silos between tech and product teams, UX research and customer insights. Even like within customer divisions, sometimes there's silos, isn't there? It's not always entirely joined up. So I think that vision point is really important, but it's like, well, what is the vision for? Like, if you can add in being able to establish a vision for the experience with any change or transformational project or digitization, that's so helpful as guardrails, right? To be able to keep people joined up in terms of what the end delivery should look like, and in terms of things like being able to build measurement in, or as someone mentioned earlier, being able to consider the voice of the customer. You don't actually know what that customer experience is aiming to be, and nobody else understands that. It just becomes that a load of technologies turned on at different stages, and the experience becomes the outcome again. So speaking of metrics, Anne,
That's clear.
An expert area. So I think talks about needing to share and show return on investment. Also, sorry, Sonia made me giggle. I agree with Amelie, size matters. And so metrics, kind of being able to ensure these things like deliver results is critical, right? So yeah. So from a metrics point of view, what is the mistakes that organizations are making, or kind of what are the opportunities that we can bring through metrics? I'm going to stop giggling now.
So what I've discovered in my research is it doesn't actually matter what kind of digital transformation you're doing, whether you're doing it for efficiency's sake, or you're trying to improve the customer experience, or you're changing the whole organization. The number one metric that people are measuring, and Alexandra mentioned it earlier, is return on investment. That is what the business wants. They want a return on investment. So if you can create a compelling business case that that can talk to that metric, you sort of that's your gatekeeper. That's your ticket to the game, if you like. But there are secondary metrics that are almost just as important as the financial performance metric that then have to get delivered upon throughout that implementation. And I know that Amelie prefers the word implementation to transformation. So that's you want to look at some of the innovation metrics, like, are we building new competencies and new capacities within our organization? Are we building new skill? Are we able to cope with problems of the future and not solve things in the same way as we always have? There's also the customer and marketing metrics. So, customer lifetime value, CSAT, MPS, all of those things that have to that get measured. And oftentimes we find that these secondary metrics weren't what the organization focused on to start with, but they actually become almost as important, if not more so, to deliver adoption and change management, some of the things that have been mentioned in the chat several times. And so if you're not measuring how satisfied is my customer with this change, how satisfied are my employees with this change, has it delivered the impact in terms of improved productivity, have they learned this new skill, how's the adoption of the system been, then you're really not going to deliver on that primary metric of return on capital invested. And everyone's favorite metrics are, of course, was it on time? Was it on budget? Was it a quality project? And so what I found was those are your 4 key metrics that people are measuring when it comes to digital transformation. Number 1, financial performance. Number 2, innovation metrics. Number 3, customer and marketing metrics. And number 4, project management information systems metrics. And they haven't really changed, those ones, for the last 25 years. But they're still critical because, unfortunately, some of the people that we are having to convince at the board and exco level have been there for 25 years, and that's how they measure success.
I like that. Not much has changed, but it would be really interesting to see the instance of those project metrics, because I think one of the big challenges being it always takes longer than you expect. There are also unforeseen implementation challenges and quite often extra additional investment to be able to integrate a lot of the stuff that is being brought down the line as well.
Yes.
And Shamim, anything to add from you? Is there anything that we've missed here? Any other kind of big challenges or opportunities when it comes to this subject?
I've got a couple actually that spring to mind. Well, it's kind of going back to the beginning because fundamentally, businesses still need to adapt and they need to evolve to remain relevant to the people they serve, as well as their employees. They can't keep trying to, or they shouldn't, should I say, keep trying to sweat the existing assets because they really are creaking and falling apart at the seams. And I think, one of the benefits of the pandemic is that it did hyper accelerate the adoption of digital services. And I think, they tried really hard to meet the expectations of customers or even their own employees in terms of how they transact and how they interact as well, because fundamentally we're all at home and we all wanted to communicate, when we want to on a channel of our choice. And I think as well, what another benefit of the pandemic, unfortunately, was that a lot of organizations actually realized that they can operate, in a hybrid world, or have the whole of their workforce at home and still be successful. As an example, I went for a run with my friend last week, and she works for a really big bank in the UK. And she texted me to say she's going to be late because she was working from her mum, and her mum's elderly, she's poorly. She would never have been allowed to do that pre-pandemic, and for an organization like a bank who like Anne said, instilled usually in ways of working from, days of yesteryear, that's a huge win for her and a lot of her colleagues. But what I will say is, going back to some of the challenges, I'm still seeing, and I'm sure you all are as well, businesses and brands, they're still applying some of the insane metrics that they did 10 years ago, 4 days to answer a bloody email, or, the business is deciding that, okay, it's better for us as a business if nobody calls us. So what we're going to do is deflect everybody to chat or to something else. And then all you've got is a huge army of very upset customers. So I think that, we've learned a lot from the pandemic, but, we need to sort of, to Amelie's point, we need to implement a lot of what we learned, the lessons that we learned, and make it right for customers and make it right for the employees.
So I was like smiling there, Shameen, because I think it was like May. I got on a call to a service provider, and they still had that message on, due to pandemic, we are experiencing extremely high call volumes. It's like, that just won't wash now.
Exactly.
Get deflected over here and not be able to resolve my issue. Very frustrating. So kind of asked around like the common mistakes that businesses make when it comes to transformation. But if there's like one word that you'd say we should be focusing on, because like it or not, digital transformation is not going away, is it? Like businesses use this as a common mode of delivering change and technology now. So if there was like a one word, like we should be focusing on this to get it right, what would you say? And any volunteers to go first?
Collaboration.
I like that one, Amelie. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's so many comments in the chat that are talking about, breaking down the barriers and the silos between teams, being able to create this holistic vision for what we're trying to do, whether that's from a technology or experience perspective. Who wants to go next? One word. What should we be focusing on?
Pragmatism.
I do like that word. Why didn't that mean?
Well, because you have to be pragmatic when you're looking at these projects. And, I'm going to slightly disagree with Amelie in that you can go big. The thing is, you can go big and do a big flash to bang. Yeah, you could do phase segments, implementations. So to make it sort of, make it consumable and make sure that it doesn't overwhelm the different teams. But we have to be pragmatic in realizing, the undertaking of what we're doing and all of the nuances that come with it, because humans at the middle means lots of variables that you just cannot prepare for, even with the best brains in the world. So a bit of pragmatism along the way.
Just made me think of an example. I know I shared this with you ladies the other day. Was a bit of an example of both of these things. So for me, it's about delivering value as early as possible and as often as possible in any project. And someone's asked about agility, and we'll come back to that question at the end. But I was working with an organization who were convinced, because Amazon had just delivered single sign-on, that the next thing we needed to do in our digital roadmap was to build the perfect single sign-on. I came along with my customer experience approach, and so actually listening to what customers wanted and needed. And this project was going to take 3 years and literally 10 million quid to deliver. When it turned out all customers actually wanted now was just to have the single username and password across all of their accounts, because there were multiple brands. And that was only going to cost 10,000, and it could be done in weeks. So like being able to kind of question pragmatically, like, does this really have the value that we think it does, associated with the cost that is going to be attributed to it? And is there something simpler and more that we can do faster that will release benefit here and now? It's an interesting comment just popped up on the screen there from Susanna. In my opinion, you can't consider CX and EX in isolation when considering digital transformation. The most successful projects I've seen in Webb both are carefully considered. Yeah, and definitely in contact centers, especially, because so much of the tech that is digitally transforming the world actually is in their hands. And yeah, has anyone got any thoughts on that comment from Susanna?
Oh yeah, and even when you start to be mature in CX, you still lag behind with the EX, because the amount of maintenance, the new digital tools you're implementing in that transformation is weighting so much on people now. The people who build these tools now need to take care of them. Everything digital you build needs to be maintained. This is not like any other campaign or any other thing you ever did, actually. And that's new work. So that's important when you build something, that, okay, the customer, but also the people who are going to maintain that solution on the side. And that's super important, what you said, Susanna. Super.
Yeah. Sorry, I just derailed the conversation there with that comment. But I totally agree. Yeah, it's not something that can be considered in isolation. So Christy, what's your one word?
Expectations.
Okay.
So oftentimes projects fail because there's a lack of understanding of the complexity around people, processes, and technology. And Also, if it's viewed as a one and done project versus an ongoing longer term strategy, that could also fail. So it's really just setting everybody's expectations, especially when you're thinking about senior leaders, and making sure what you're delivering aligns with what they're expecting. And if not, then you course correct from the very early beginning and show those quick wins and value to get them to where they want to, that big win that they want at the end.
Okay. So I just noticed the time, and wow, we're running out. So I'm going to go into a quick fire round now. So I've got some specific questions to ask each of you related to your personal preference, discipline around this subject. So Anne, I'm going to ask you, how do you ensure that you're transforming, whatever you're transforming, has a material impact on customer experience?
Claire, in my opinion, you have to start with the customer journey. So in a nutshell, you want to leverage digital technologies so that you're reducing friction for your customer, right? So by mapping out every touch point and breaking down the experience that the customer is having with the service or your product to identify where does the process need improvement, or where could a touch point be digitized to improve the experience. So I worked with a large building supplier, a retailer in South Africa, and they had a credit application that took 10 days to conclude. And there were paper forms and hard copies that had to be submitted by the customer at a local store. And obviously, that's just not good customer experience in this day and age. So initially, they had 7 points of checking documents within their process. And checks ran up 5 levels of authorization and motivation. And all of that was done via email and actually handing a paper file from desk to desk to desk. So before we could even think about digitizing that process, we had to first redesign it. And once we'd managed to redesign the process, we got it down to 4 days by leveraging emerging technologies and implementing online portals for application and document upload, optical character recognition to capture the data accurately, and then machine learning to eliminate some of the layers of approval in the process, by way of example. So the result is a slicker process that's a lot less painful for the customer, but also less painful for the employee. And that's where you get, and somebody's already mentioned it, your true win-win between employee journey has improved and customer journey has improved. So if you start with the customer journey and you eliminate those points of friction, you can start small, like Emily says, and identify those quick wins where you can start to build a collaboration and a coalition of support within the company, which is, change management 101. And once people start to see the snowball starting to roll, you can then tackle your bigger projects, like putting in larger systems that cost more money. So that's where I would start. And I think adoption would be your key metric there.
I do
One
love an
quick
as
thing
is
I
journey.
would like to add, if that's okay, is in addition to that, one thing that's always helpful is looking at effectiveness, ease, and emotion as it relates to the customer. So are they able to do what they need to do throughout that journey? Is it easy for them? And then what is that emotion? If it's confidence using a new product, if it's empowerment with this, if it's satisfaction, and that also helps guide where you've got the biggest levers of influence across that customer journey.
I love that, Christy. And we actually use that to measure touch points. At every touch point in the journey, you can measure effectiveness, emotion, consistency, all of those good things.
Great.
Awesome. And a quick fire question to Shameem. What tools and approaches have you used to ensure digital transformation is delivering human value?
Well, I loved it. I love the discovery process, and it incorporates everything that Anne just said. But I think what it also does is provide structure around how the business can transform. What I mean by this, if you view structure and the process and look at things like the day in the life, what it does is underpins the strategy, providing valuable data, providing you insights that identify the current challenges and the pain points. Because what we want to do is make sure that we're just not in this position at the exact same time, in a couple of years ahead. But what I want to say is I personally always start from the inside, but I also want an outside-in perspective. And really, you want to be able to join the dots. You want to bring in the customer journey with the employee experience, but also looking at tools, processes, the whole shebang. I've detailed it in my article, but yeah, I don't want to take up too much time because I know we haven't got much time left.
Well, great marketing of your article there. Yes, have to read Shami's article for more information on that. But yeah, kind of outside in being like the customer who they need, but also inside out. Well, what's the business trying to do? What are the objectives it's trying to reach through any change?
Yeah, and just making sure that you've got the foundations before you kick off and do anything else. So because if you're building on sand, you're on the highway to nowhere. So
and just critical that we're identifying those quick wins, right? I think heard it come through a couple of times now. So being able to say, okay, so we've looked at the customer journey as it is, and we can clearly see that this is broken. We use things like workshops to bring people together, to collaborate, to identify, well, where are those problems coming from, and identifying people, process, technology issues, and figuring out how to solve those. And as Anne said, like some of the longer term digital transformation projects might be something very sexy and expensive, but there are so many things that can be improved through better people, process, technology alignment, even just today. So being able to take a customer-led or customer journey-led or customer experience-led approach as part of this bigger, wider digital transformation will always help to surface a view that might not otherwise be seen by asking people through business analysis in different teams what's wrong. Like it. So getting ready to go to questions in a second, but another quick fire one. So Christy, how should we approach customer experience and digital transformation as a vehicle to deliver holistic business value? Big question.
It is, yeah. The first thing is you've got to be able to tell the right story. And you've got to get strong leadership, vision, and communication, and tell a story in such a way that you can make a connection between, here are the levers that we're going to improve from a customer experience perspective, and here's what that will look like from a business value perspective. So depending on the industry, so from a med device perspective, it's can we keep the customer satisfied and on the product a little bit longer? And there's financial value to the organization in order to calculate that and be able to show that back. And so trying to make those connections, accounting for change management. We talked about the employee experience. Also having a culture that can iterate and learn. This goes back to starting small, and you learn and you grow. It's an evolution, not a one and done. And then you connect everything across with the journey, tying it all back to the customer impact, and then having hierarchy of metrics to support that.
That is a great answer. And I just remembered thinking back to when I used to run workshops on the business side, and for clients, we used to have this matrix of exactly that when we were looking at the quick wins, to be able to say, well, what's the value to the customer? What's the value to the business? And also incorporated, well, how easy or hard is that to do? So being able to look on that scale and go, well, there's a win-win, like great high value customer impact, and clearly either a cost saving or a revenue benefit, or help it's super easy to implement, or we can wind it into another project that's already happening. It's definitely the stuff to go after first. And when you're talking about ROI of any of these activities, being able to be a team, be individuals, be leaders within the mix of digital transformation that are adding value rather than slowing things down and saying, oh, but what about the customer experience? Being able to work with those teams through that change, offer different views, use our tools to be able to show those opportunities is, I think it's really all we can do, because we're not going to stop the way businesses work in this way. And especially bigger, more complex and older organizations, this is the way that they work. It's all about us being able to find a route in that adds value through this lens that we have. And I was just giggling because Susanna was saying the three-legged stool, tools, process, and people need to have them all in balance, otherwise the stool falls over. That just really made me smile, Susanna. Thank you for that one. Okay, so let's go to questions from the audience now. And before we wrap up, ladies, I'm going to ask you for one thought you'd like people to leave with. So I'm giving you a bit of time to prep for that one. So we've got a question for Anne, I think. Where is it? Okay, so what are your favourite and most effective ways for measuring success throughout the customer journey? Big question.
That's like a how long is a piece of string answer, because I think it depends what the journey is, right? So if you have an online journey where you are selling something, then you want that person to act throughout the journey without abandoning their cart and concluding their journey, and so that would be your successful metric. But if you had a much longer journey, like a credit application process, or like somebody having to do something that takes a number of days, you would want to measure it differently. You would maybe want to measure those emotional touch points and see what is their emotion at each of the touch points like. So I think it's about selecting the right metric given the context of the touch point, and you can't measure across every single touch point. So you got to pick the touch points where you can get good, reliable data, and then look at that touch point and say, in the context of this touch point, what can I measure? What data is available, and therefore what becomes meaningful? So I can't give you my favorite metric for customer journey. I like emotion, but it's pretty hard to measure if you have sort of a 10-minute cart journey. How was that? Great. The other day I had to fill in an online banking application to open a bank account, and the process was seamless. But do I have a bank account open? No, because I have 55 million documents that I still have to submit. So very happy at the end of filling in my stuff online, but today I'm not so happy because I'm still waiting to get the thing to submit the document. So it depends is not a fun answer that anybody wants to hear, but it does.
Yeah, I was going to add to that I think it gets most interesting when you start to change things. So if you're able, I agree with you, being able to measure what you can measure, and across customer marketing, financial metrics, like the whole suite of any customer journey. But it's being able to monitor the impact of doing something different, especially when it comes to change in customer experience or innovation, being able to see materially whether or not that thing that you changed had an impact, and whether or not that impact can be evaluated as success. So we've got another one. I think this one's for Amelie, I think. Okay. Tips for improving collaboration with tech and product teams to drive customer-centric initiatives forward. Give your product and your collaboration.
That would be to start to adopt lean methodologies. So you might have your tech team who are already working with agile, and you are kind of doing your own agile on your side, but you have to create a moment where you are together, a team, and where you agree on how you work together, because pushing one method on the other will never make a good adoption. You really have to create the space within that collaboration. When you get together, when you need to agree on something, you need to create the space to develop the same language, to develop the same objective, to develop the same vision. And that's how you start. And I recommend, so I've repeated already, but to start small. So take insights, regular CX insights. You got them all. For you, what sounds trivial today is brand new and very insightful for the other people. So bring new stuff every day. I don't know anybody working in a company who is not triggered by, which curiosity is not growing when he hears something about a customer. This is really triggering whatever ways. It is triggering curiosity. So enjoy that process and bring some insights and create the space for a real discussion to find common grounds. I would start with this. You are a team already. It's just you don't have the name for it.
And sometimes it's challenging with products specifically, isn't it? And the more kind of software oriented the organization, software as a service, for example, like the product centricity is the framework within which that organization operates. So, being able to change people's perceptions or opinions, or to be more customer centric is actually really difficult. But I used to be a massive fan of just going and showing up at the scrum, and when they were doing their backlog prioritization, just asking questions about value and whether or not there could be an opportunity to maybe perhaps prioritize this, because I had a piece of insight that actually that would be a massive win for customers. That could help us with all these other metrics. But typically in a product life cycle, people are just looking at what we've got to deliver next, aren't they? So to loop
it's
that
very
back in.
process driven, huh? So
Yeah.
that's very hard. You feel like you're a little rock in the system, in the mechanism. They're looking at you like, what are you doing? There are rules around. But yeah, so sometimes you need some support to create that space I was mentioning, because processes are hard to break. But that's the way you go. You are not breaking anything, you're enlarging the opportunities.
And just like getting involved in their way of doing things as well, right? Because the more kind of closer you can get and relationships that you can build with teams that do work differently, the more likely you are to be able to influence over time. So yeah, start with shows up Instagram. It's really fun. Okay, so you've got Sean asking, to improve CX, what other tools, methodologies and approaches does one consider over and above digital transformation? I definitely don't think digital transformation is an approach to improve CX, but that's just my humble opinion. Does anyone want to share kind of tools, methodologies that actually do drive improvement to CX?
Lean methods, everything agile, but
so
test
and learn and start small. I agree with you on that one, Emily. That's come across loud and clear today. Anyone else got a tool or methodology or approach to improve customer experience?
A voice of the customer is one. So that's a tooling and approach. So it could be anything from a survey to actually looking at data and using AI to be more predictive in where the customer needs are versus just retroactive in what they've done.
And fundamentally, just actually doing something with that data, insight and voice of the customer would frankly improve a lot of customer experience. Actually having a close to that loop of feedback rather than just sitting there and having lovely shiny reports and dashboards would be a really great start.
Yeah, and merging, oftentimes we had an example where we had, you look at the quantitative just dashboard and trending, to your point, and you overlay that, if you're lucky enough to have survey feedback of that same, and just the disconnect between where there's a perceived issue and where there's not is really helpful to close by layering that together.
Oh, nice. Well, I think that was all the questions, and people are already starting to say thank you. So I think people are getting ready to pop off to their next meeting. So, are there any final thoughts from anybody? Like, what one thing would you want people to take away from this conversation? So, Christy, while we're on you, 30 seconds.
It's hard, but it's worth it. There's a quote, like, I'm not telling you it's going to be easy. I'm telling you it's going to be worth it. So don't give up. Keep trying to push that CX rock up the hill.
Nice. Yeah. Keep pushing. Don't give up. I like it. Shameen?
Finish what you started and try not to run out of steam, because the status quo is easier than evolving. Remember your why and just make sure that everything that you're doing is compelling for all the stakeholders.
Nice. I like that one. So 2 points on resilience. It's not easy, this job, is it, at all? It's just the truth of the matter. Go for it, Emily. What's yours?
Don't forget that the person behind that figure or that behind that other desk is a person just like you. And so talking will always bring you some insights.
Nice. And last but not least, Anne, finish it off. What would you like to say for people to take away?
I think you need a plan. The plan doesn't have to be huge. You can start small and build it up. But your plan does need to have some metrics. You do need to know how you plan to measure success when you start out. It may not be how you measured success at the end, and you may find some unexpected benefits emerge, and that's okay too. But have a plan and have some metrics before you start so that you can communicate a compelling case for change when it comes to that business case that the FD is looking for.
Oh, and the all-important FD. So good point to finish on there. Thank you very much, Anne. So thank you ever so much to our audience. Thank you so much to our panelists. You're amazing. Great to see the crew out again about talking about this subject this month. And for anybody who's interested in joining the world's first online membership community for women in CX, You can take it from all of us. It's a wonderful place to be. Visit womenincx.community at our website or membership page. You can find out more about us there. And that's it. So that's it until September now, because we're all taking a little holiday for August. So we'll be back in September with our next panel, which will be on data, metrics, and ROI. See you all next time. Bye.
Bye.